Hey, how we doing, everybody? Welcome back. It is Space Cowboy here alongside Cowboys Beat for the Cowboys Roundup episode 8. We are just on the precipice of the NFL Combine, so a lot of stock is going to change when it comes to how we're doing the mock drafts and also where these prospects are going to go. Some dudes you might not have heard of are going to shoot up the draft board. Other dudes you thought are going to go top 10 are going to fall. It is what it is. We also have a bunch of other things to cover here today, such as the Zack Martin retirement, as well as some news that the Cowboys front office is getting to work on some of these extensions. Chris, how are you doing today this morning, my friend?
In the words of Vach Lombardi and Brian Broaddus, we're doing all right.
That's great to hear, my friend. So we're going to go ahead and dive straight into this because a lot has happened, I would say, in the last 24 hours, or 48 hours at that, which has pretty much changed the trajectory of how we're looking at this team. And I think the biggest thing we need to start off with is Zack Martin's retirement. We talked about it in previous shows. It looked like that Zack Martin was going to leave the team after this year, whether that be he goes to a different team or most likely he retires. And unfortunately, he has retired, 34 going on 35 years of age. Dude, 7 first team All Pros and only 7 holding calls throughout his entire career. Ain't that something? That's very impressive. Go ahead, my friend. What do you think about this whole
Well,
thing?
the first thing I want to start off by saying is like there is the meme going around or the stat, and it's not. I'm not trying to do it in the Stephen Jones air quote way, where people are talking about these are the list of Cowboys that never saw the NFC Championship game. Save that for another day. Let's celebrate the career of Zack Martin, and then we'll move on to that and roast the front office for
Right.
their malpractice. But let's celebrate the career of Zack Martin. He's one of the best guards that has ever played the game of football. Just incredibly consistent as well throughout the course of his entire career. This was a tough career, or not. I'm sorry, not career. This was a tough year for him because he did get injured. And I don't think that the level of play, he didn't play that well this year. But if he was willing to come back, I was willing to give him another chance due to the fact that I do think he could still play at a high level. The problem is when you have that, an injury I think it was a lower body injury that he was dealing with. Um, that's going to be a problem for him. So I think personally that's what went on there. But at the same time, he was a tremendous Dallas Cowboy, you know, worth that 14th. I think it was the 14th overall pick or the 16th overall pick that we used on him. Thank God they talked Stephen Jones or Jerry Jones out of drafting Johnny Manziel. And yeah, definitely one of the best Cowboys of all time, one of the best players of all time, and he will be in Canton in 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. You had the 16th overall pick, the whole drama of are the Cowboys going to take Johnny Manziel? They go with Zack Martin, which shocked a lot of people. Whether it was because you wanted not you would like, you know what I mean? People wanted Johnny Manziel. People wanted something more of a sexy type of pick, but unfortunately, that's not what they got. But what we instead got was one of the best guards of all time to play the position. And, the fact of the matter is this guy, he played 11 seasons for your team. And then in those 11 seasons, 9 out of those were Pro Bowl All Pro years. And again, that is excellence at the position, the consistency that I don't think we're going to see ever again. Like a dude that has as many holding calls as all pro nominations. Like that is insane to me. Like, I mean, first team all pro nominations. That's like insane to me. And so look, we celebrate it. I think he's going to go into the Ring of Honor. Clearly, he is exactly what you want to see in a guy like that. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame, whether it's first ballot because of how this whatever, I'm just really and I'm upset that he didn't win a championship here, but at the same time, this guy put everything on the line for this team. And it's sad how he went out, but the thing is he left on his own terms. And that's where we'll leave it at that. Congrats to Zack Martin on a fantastic career. Fortune doesn't end in a championship, but at the end of the day, to your point, the whole list that comes out of like, oh, all these players that didn't win get to the NFC title game, we can have that conversation down the road. But I think we need to, give him his flowers, right? Because he definitely deserves that. So Let's go ahead and let's move on to Cowboys news of things, and that involves some interesting things from Mr. First Question. For those that don't know who I'm talking about David Moore. And there was some inclinations that the Dallas Cowboys are starting to work on some negotiations with some of their players. So out in Indianapolis, where the combine's being held, there was a report that came out from David Moore that said that they've begun, or not even just that the report said it, Stephen Jones even talked about it, talking about how they're working on a contract extension for Osa Odighizuwa. And there were some couple quotes that were said. Stephen said, "We've had negotiations with Osa. I just think that Osa is a really good football player. He's an important piece." And then this is what's interesting. And you guys want to, and we talked about the possibility of them using the franchise tag, Chris. We talked about that last episode. He said the following. Or what they said was, so the Cowboys have been reluctant to use the franchise or transition tag on players in recent years to prevent them from hitting free agency. We know that from experience. Those numbers for Odighizuwa would be $23.4 million for a franchise tag or $18.9 million for the transition tag. So that would give Dallas the rights of first refusal if the defensive tackle got an offer from another team. Now, the other thing is that this is where I want people to pay attention, is that Steven said it's a tool. And then he also added, by the time the Cowboys leave Indianapolis this weekend, he would like to have a feel whether or not that the club will be using one of the tags, and it's something they haven't ruled out using. And now this is something that's a bit scary, but just as a side note, they also talked about how they want to retain Rico Dowdle and Jordan Lewis, as well as there's talks about them possibly doing a Micah Parsons extension at some point. Now, I know that's a lot of information, but I want to start off with the Osa situation. I want you, if you don't mind, Chris, could you give me your thoughts on Osa Odighizuwa? Do you think the Cowboys should pay him? Do you think they should let him walk? Like, on a priority scale, how important is it to get him back here?
Here's the thing. It's all about, to me, what does the market look like if it's not Osa Odighizuwa, right? Like, this defensive tackle class, it's very good. It's exceptional. But at the same time, like, I would kind of like it if, hey, if we have Osa, still go out and draft a defensive tackle. It's just one of those positions that, you need it on your team. Osa Odighizuwa is a really good player. And there's just no telling if you're going to be able to upgrade if you decide to move on from Osa Odighizuwa. Now, I've been saying, like, hey, that money you're going to pay Osa, just pay that to Milton Williams. But again, that's a decision that Milton Williams has to make. It's not just one of those things where it's like, oh, against your will, you can just come and be a Cowboy. So it's going to be a price that I don't think a lot of people are going to be excited to pay Osa. If they do end up paying him. But at the end of the day, I think it'll probably be the right move from the standpoint of you just don't have anybody else. And he's he's a very good player. Like, I'm looking at some of his numbers just as a pass rusher. You're looking at hurries, he's 5th in the league. Quarterback hits 4th in the league. Total pressure 3rd in the league amongst defensive tackles, that is, by the way. Stops 30th, or I'm sorry, 12th, sacks 12th. So, this guy's going to command a big time payday. And, the numbers are there, but I would also say this, make sure that you go get a guy like, Javon Kinlaw was somebody that people have talked about. Hey, you can still go sign that guy.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that. You can still go draft a defensive tackle. Because I can tell you this, if they re-sign Osa, they go out there and sign a Javon Kinlaw. They draft another defensive tackle. They have Mozzie Smith, who I actually think this year will be the year he makes the jump into being a good football player. Not great, just a good football player. So now your defensive tackle room is way better than it was last season, I would say, me personally. And then I think your defensive ends are going to be a little better because, Williams is going to be coming back healthy. Nealon's going to be in his 2nd year. Obviously, Micah's Micah, but, maybe you re-sign Lawson. But That's kind of how I feel about this whole situation.
No, and that's some great points because at the end of the day, there needs to be a cohesive plan of how you're handling this roster. And if you bring back Osa, we're not complaining. I think, we talked about it, I believe, the last episode I brought up, Kinlaw and other defensive tackle names, but also in that same light, he's not going to command a huge market, that being Kinlaw and some of these other players that you can go get to add bodies into the room, right? Because to me, if the pairing right is you're going to pair Osa and Mozzie, as like Osa primarily being your 3 tech, and then you have Mozzie being the 1 tech or something to that effect, I think you can work with that. But the thing is that the Cowboys, and we've said it several times, and I'm going to say it again on the show, they have to spend money. They can't cry poor and then wonder why the team isn't getting better. Yeah, because you're not spending money on the team. So for Osa, the other thing that we might also have to consider is sometimes when the Cowboys sign their own, the contracts aren't terrible. Like these are great contracts to work on. Like I think with last year in relation to Jordan Lewis, I'm shocked he came back for that cheap of a number. I thought he would command a bit more for his market, but lo and behold, he stayed. And we've seen this several times. Like, you look at like Michael Gallup's contract, like guys like Lyle Collins and Jalen Smith. Those contracts are seen as team friendly because they're not as market commanding as you would think, even though they're pretty sizable contracts. So that's something like, you look at what's going on. Do I think Osa is going to get $20 million a year? Maybe on the open market. But the thing is like, like we said, who else do you have? Like, I think they're going to force their hand. Now, here's the one thing I don't want them to do. Don't franchise tag him. Because if you franchise tag him and you're trying to do an extension, the floor is going to be the $23 million. Like, that's the problem I have. And also, you forcing the franchise tag shows me that you wanted to F around, and you're going to find out. And also, that handicaps you because that franchise tag, ladies and gentlemen, is fully guaranteed if you don't know that. So that's going to suck up all of the cap space that you have to go make moves. Or if you do make moves, then you got to move under the cap and all that other stuff. So there is that. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about were some of the other ancillary moves that the Cowboys were looking to do. Bringing back Jordan Lewis, bringing back Rico Dowdle. And on top of that, we don't know what's going to happen with D-Law. We don't know if he's going to retire like Zack Martin. They're coming from the same draft class. He's been beat up. Also a Micah Parsons extension. So let me frame it this way, Chris. Let's say the Dallas Cowboys re-sign Osa. They don't extend to Micah Parsons. They retain Jordan Lewis. And let's just say they, by some miracle, retain Rico Dowdle. So they retain those 3 players, right? If they do that, how are we feeling? Because to me, like, if they get this done before March, or more specifically before the opening of free agency, I'm feeling a little bit more confident on what they might do. But like, what if that was the game plan? Like, those were the only dudes that they bring back. Maybe some of the I'm not talking about like the dudes that cost like $1 million, like your long snapper and stuff like that. But like, how are we feeling as fans if those are the moves they bring those guys back?
So Dowdle, Lewis, Odighizuwa. I feel like at that point you're kind of running back what you had last year, which, by the way, if you run back what you had last year personnel wise and you add to it and you have young players that take a step forward, I mean, like last year they did win 7 games. I mean, they beat the Buccaneers, which, I mean, they won their division without Dak. They beat them. They almost beat the Cincinnati Bengals. They were on a hot streak there at the end of the season. This isn't a bad football team by any stretch of the imagination. Last year, I just think that you had a bad luck with injuries. Like a bad football team is like the Patriots. That's a bad football team. I think people like saying that this team is bad when it's not that. They're not that bad. They're below average last year. And I personally think if you bring back some of those guys, Dowdle, Odighizuwa, and Jordan Lewis, and you add, let's just say, like a Kinlaw, a Stephon Diggs to the situation, you go out there and you draft pretty well. Your young players take that next step forward. You'll be a much better football team. You'll be a playoff team next year. So it's not the end of the world because those guys are good football players. And if you're bringing back good football players, there is a high likelihood that you're going to be a good football team next year.
No, completely agree. And I think that's the main thing, is that with you retaining some of these players that were core contributors to your team, right? That's going to pretty much set the tone of what you're looking to do next. Now, the other thing, and for Cowboys fans that are watching the show, and also just something to keep in mind, because you probably heard this in other Twitter spaces out there and things like that. To me, if the Cowboys touch Dak Prescott's contract and they open up some money, and they do that with re-signing Osa, that's going to tell me a lot about what they're going to do. Do I think they touch Dak's contract? I don't know. I don't think so. I just think that they're just, to me, like, part of my brain's telling me they're going to do the same shit, right? But in relation to where we're at right now, I think that if you can bring back Osa, which, to be honest with you, like, you can make that work. Don't let them say they can't let it work. If you re-sign Micah, you open up a crap load of money, which pretty much will help you pay for Osa. On top of that, some of these other dudes. You touch a contract, whether it's Lamb's contract or someone, you got to you got to get money, bro. Like, they can't sit here and not extend. Like, if they're smart, they go, like, geez, it's crazy, because I think, what is it? Tyler Smith's now going into his, Jesus, he's going into fourth year. That's crazy.
If they're smart, they re-sign him.
Sign him. There's no point in waiting. There's no point. You get those extensions done. We talk about it later. But yeah, to kind of end the note on that particular topic, just from my perspective, is you need to get these extensions done. That way we can go into the offseason defensively. If we're just talking about on the defensive side of the ball, we know we have Osa, a defensive tackle that's great at pass rushing, but also we can build on that. And then on top of that, offensively, if you bring back Rico Dowdle, you're not, like, I don't have a problem if Rico goes or not. It's just that they need to replenish the talent they lose, whatever that looks like.
Well, and also another thing about Osa is, like, a reason why it would be smart to bring him back is because of how much emphasis Matt Eberflus's scheme has on the front four getting pressure. And when you talk about defensive linemen getting pressure, Odighizuwa fifth in the league in pressures. So, that is something that's going to have a lot of emphasis placed on it. So, and also I think, Foots brought this up. This, like, kind of gets rid of that thought of potentially drafting Walter Nolan at 12. And I wouldn't be for that whatsoever. So, you never know, but that's like a hidden thing that makes me say, like, hey, I'm cool with bringing back Osa.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of where I'm at with it as well. Now, there was another thing that Stephen Jones said with the media out in Indianapolis at the Combine. And he talked about the possibility of the Cowboys investing in another draft pick and getting a quarterback to develop behind Dak Prescott. Of course, Dak's getting up there in age. You don't know how things can go about. And we've been doing that in our mock drafts. And we've talked about the Cowboys needing to take shots at the quarterback position, not to dethrone Dak Prescott. It's that you don't know what can happen. You don't know when a dude is going to hang it up. You don't know when someone's going to have a career-ending injury. You got to be prepared. But the main reason is you need to get someone to develop behind Cooper Rush, because to me, Cooper Rush, like, you can do better than that. Yeah, we appreciate what he did. I'm not trying to say like he was like the worst thing ever out there. But again, like, you can clearly see why the dude's a backup quarterback. Unfortunately, there are fans that think that Cooper Rush is better than Dak Prescott. I'm sorry, you're all stupid, but that's just my opinion. Not even opinion, it's fact, but that's besides the point. Now, keep in mind that they talk about, Dak's going to be the highest paid player in the NFL this upcoming season. But the main thing is that it's not Dak Prescott's fault that he got the contract he did. It's because the Jones boys, I understand it takes two to tango, but the Jones boys gave him the contract that's structured the way it is. So it's on them to do their job. And so Steven basically said, we took a shot at Trey and wanted to do that. We think the world of Trey, but us having Dak signed up for the long term, I think he's probably going to look for something different, that being Trey. He then, let me just see here. There it is. And then he goes, I think one of our goals is to get a young quarterback in the draft. And I don't know where that's going to be. That's why we gave a 4th-round pick for Trey. It seems like all the quarterbacks, even guys we have in the 4th round, go in the 1st. They always go much higher than you think, shit. But And then they asked, like, what do you think about Cooper Rush? And then he said, you know how much we think of Cooper. We just don't know what he's going to cost, because again, Cooper Rush is a free agent. And then, so to that point, and then, when we're paying Dak, that's what we're paying him. Unfortunately, we have to go cheap there, meaning, so they're going to have to go cheap at the quarterback position. So here's what I think. I have no problem with the Cowboys taking a quarterback. I really do not care. My main thing is that if they're going to do that, do their homework. And honestly, this is like the worst. Well, thank God the Cowboys don't need a quarterback, because this draft class sucks when it comes to top end quarterback talent.
It's very bad.
Yeah, but if you're taking a guy in day 3, there's plenty of dudes. We've talked about Kyle McCord, for example. We've talked about, I think, was Ewers is declared, right? Yes, yeah, because he's in the mock drafts. Again, I'm not saying like I'm fond of these players becoming NFL starters, but they're developmental pieces, and you go from there. So
one name I want to bring up that
sure.
I don't think enough people are bringing up, Dylan Gabriel. Dude, when you
him
watch
too
Dylan
from Oregon,
Gabriel,
yeah.
You watch Dylan Gabriel, just like I haven't sat down and watched his tape yet, but like I've watched Tej Johnson, and I've seen games where Dylan Gabriel, like if I'm watching like Ohio State's defense or somebody else's that played Oregon, I'm like, man, this Dylan Gabriel guy, he's pretty damn good. Like he delivers the ball on time, good footwork in the pocket, understands pocket manipulation and where to go in the pocket to deliver an accurate football. There's a lot of things that I like about Dylan Gabriel. So, I mean, if he's a guy that's there in the 5th, I'm absolutely taking him, because I think that's a guy right away that can come in and be a serviceable NFL quarterback, which is what you want your backup quarterback to be.
Exactly. And the thing is you don't know how these dudes are going to develop, because, for example, when we took Dak Prescott in the 4th, you didn't expect this dude to become a starter. And I think that's the thing, is you want these dudes to perform well, right? So if you take a flyer on a Gabriel or a Ewers or whoever, you can throw whatever name, and they end up being something like, that's a good problem to have, because at the end of the day, and this is exactly why I get annoyed, is because yes, you want to move, like, for those that say we want to move on from Dak because we're paying him too much money to do this, that, and the third. Okay, well, at the end of the day, if you get another quarterback, if you're not going to build around said quarterback, it doesn't matter. We've seen this happen, say, like time in, time out. And so that's why I get frustrated, because if you aren't willing to do the things necessary, the tools you have at your disposal to build around Dak Prescott, he's making all this money, even though the cap hits weren't as bad as they were until now, because again, they're the way they structured the contract. It is what it is. And so, I mean, again, anyone that's like, and I'll say this, anyone that's saying like, the Cowboys should take a quarterback, that's a waste of a pick. No, it's not a waste of a pick. You got to remember, Cooper Rush might go get money elsewhere for being a backup quarterback. Cooper Rush might come back, but you don't know how long he's had. And so with that, I'm not entirely sure what else, we're going to do at this point. So we'll see how things go. Just keep an eye out on the one thing I will say, and then if you have anything else you can add on, and then we'll move on. The one thing I want people to understand is pay attention to who the Cowboys meet at the combine, who they talk with. That's something you want to keep an eye out on, because a lot of the times we've seen, especially in the Mike McCarthy era, those they meet at the combine and talk to, they usually take in the draft. So that's something.
I'd like to add something. So Tom Pelissero just reported 8 minutes ago, East Carolina cornerback Siobhan Revelle, a first-round draft prospect who had ACL reconstruction October 15th, is on schedule to be fully cleared this summer. His surgeon, Dr. Daniel Cooper, told NFL teams in a letter. Revelle is in Indianapolis this week for interviews and medical checks. Dr. Cooper is the Cowboys team doctor, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Also, I love this comment. Dak had 9 All-Pros. Stop it. Well, he was one of the 9 All-Pros, and the other 2 were special teamers, but okay. But yeah, so I just want to add that, because look, cornerback, it's a need for the Cowboys. Like, we're unsure of Diggs' future. Deron Bland, this is the last year on his contract. Jordan Lewis, we're not sure if he's going to be around, but that's something to look at. So
yeah, exactly, and that's the thing, is like at the end of the day, like, one of the big things is that, again, if people think, oh, we're Dak defenders or whatever, bro, I do not give a shit who's throwing the ball. Unfortunately, he's the dude throwing the ball. So I'm kind of just trying to go with the flow of how they're going about it. And also, again, the Cowboys aren't going to do anything to remedy the situation. So I'm just trying to, speak in the realm of realism when it comes to the team. So I'm sorry if you don't like the fact that I'm not throwing Dak under the bus, but is what it is. So moving on, one of the main things is that I wanted to kind of go back and talk about the whole Trey Lance situation, right? And how the Cowboys have mismanaged their draft capital. You traded for Trey Lance, taking a flyer on him. He didn't pan out. You traded another 4th round pick this year for Jonathan Mingo, which he showed flashes. That's it. But my thing is that they're willing to give up the 4th round pick, right? But they're not willing to give up a 2nd round pick for, other players, because we've seen this happen in 2023 too, right? Where they gave up 5th and 6th round comp picks for Gilmore and Cooks, which is a barely doing your job type of move, right? I wanted to kind of go off of the fact that we're supposed to get I think 4 comp picks this year. And so I wanted to just get your thoughts, Chris. Would you how should they manage this moving forward? Their draft compensation, or not draft compensation, you know what I mean? Their draft capital, because clearly they don't care about the 4th round pick, which is bizarre to me. But I mean, what do we think?
I mean, look, I would use that to move up in the, you would, so you have four fifths. I would use 2 of those fifths to move up in the 4th round, in my personal opinion. See if you can get into the 4th round. Because that's one of the things, I forget who reported it exactly, but they were talking about when the Cowboys got rid of the 4th round pick, they were like, hey, we're confident we'll be able to get back into the 4th round because of all the 5th round picks we have. So that's something they can do. Or they can just do what they did in 2022 that actually kind of worked out for them, where they just threw a bunch of darts at the dartboard and ended up with Deron Bland in the 5th round and Jake Ferguson in the 4th round. And that was actually low key an exceptional draft that I don't think enough people talk about. But that's the way I would do it. Just I would actually just stick and pick with those 5th round picks. There's a higher likelihood that with one of those 4 5th round picks, you're going to find a player that's going to play at a high level for you, compared to moving up in the 4th round and hoping that somebody is there that can contribute at a high level. You just have a far greater possibility to find a really good player with one of the 4 5th round picks, compared to trading up into the 4th. So
yeah, exactly. And that's just kind of where it's at, is that I think that the thing is, we don't know how this draft board is going to fall, especially because we're going to see a lot of dudes shoot up the draft board, and you're going to see dudes that you're like, this dude, a 1st round pick. It's going to happen. It happens every year. And I think that one of the names, Jackson Dart, is going to be one of those names, because I've had colleagues that I've worked with in the Giants organization that are enamored with the idea of Jackson Dart being the next quarterback of the New York Giants. Now, as for that, I don't really care. Just keep pushing the players down. But the other thing is possibility of trading down, right? If you are not going to build the team through free agency, then God damn it, you need more draft picks. And that's where the risk versus reward is going to come in this year. And I think that's going to come. Do I think Ashton Genty is going to make the 12? I have honestly no idea now, because of how people have been talking about him. And then you got guys like Tet McMillan that could fall to you, which is amazing. But do I think the Cowboys would take a Tet McMillan? I don't think so, because again, with how they're talking, I think a lot of people are going to get pissed off. But I don't really have much more to add on that. And just kind of going through the notes on here, it was pretty outside of the handful of things that came up in the past 48 hours. It's pretty much been stagnant. But one of the things is that I was seeing a thing that just came out from RJ Ochoa, which was about how the Cowboys are trying to approach this offseason. And so we're going to probably see this week what the Cowboys are thinking about a possible Micah extension, number one. And then number two, one of the main things is we're really let me give me 1 second. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to make sure. One of the things is and I wanted to add this is that just because they say these things, guys, they got to put pen to paper. They have to do their job. I think it was back in March they talked about they were working on a Dak Prescott contract and took them until literally the hour before the kickoff versus Cleveland to put ink to paper, basically. You got to do your job, and the lollygagging isn't going to help. So either you don't want these dudes or you do want these guys. That's it. Plain and simple. So I wanted to ask Chris, was there any other things that you wanted to talk about before we get into a mock draft or anything like that?
Nah, yeah, I got nothing. It's that time of the year where it's kind of just it's one of the slow periods of the year right before free agency, and then there in like the June area that it starts to settle down.
Exactly. So that's why, we tell people all the time, like, this is, if you're looking for content, this is probably the worst time to look for it because, dude, there's nothing to talk about. Because, again, the Cowboys are quiet. But we're hoping, like, this week, we'll have a lot more to talk about next week because of the combine and stuff like that. And we'll go over some prospects we're looking at, who the Cowboys met with and stuff like that. I'm excited for that. But let's go ahead and pull up our mock draft here. Before we get started, I believe the last time we did no trades, if I remember. And so what I'm thinking, Chris, is we can do one trade down. I think that's going to be on the table. Worst case, we stick and pick. Just because we like to have fun with this, right? So let's go ahead and let's get things started. Oh, crap. That was fast. Let's see who. Okay, so Gentie's there.
James Pierce, Mike Green. I mean, on this board, there's nobody I'm even considering other than Ashton Genty, because I mean Pierce and Green, I like them, good players, but I don't know how much of a scheme fit they are here.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're probably looking at like Shamar Stewart. I think would be a guy that I think would be like a better scheme fit, but or Michael Williams. But you're not drafting those guys at 12. To me, look, Ashton Genty is going to impact your football team in more ways than just running the football. He's a guy that, when you get into your empty formations, you can line him up as a receiver. And that's very useful because then you can get into certain checks. If you see that they're playing him a certain type of way when he's a receiver, like, they're gonna roll out there with a linebacker. Cool. We'll throw the ball. Hey, they're lining out there in light personnel. We're gonna run the ball. Certain things like that, I think, are underrated aspects to it. And here's the thing. I know a lot of people are talking about, hey, Ashton Genty, he could potentially be just a guy that's here for 5 years and not get a second contract. Well, my question would be this: what if he is one of these running backs that shows you that he's a guy that can play later into his 20s and early 30s? Then at that point, you're probably looking at a new quarterback because Dak will be 36, 37 years old at that point. Genty could be an asset for the next quarterback as well. So that's why I'm taking Genty.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody's willing to come up the draft board, correct? Because I see 0 on the trades. Yeah, so I think we'll go with that. We'll go with Ashton Genty before. Yep, and then we'll check back in the first round because I'm really curious. If you don't mind, I just wanted to see who went before we took Ashton Genty. So let's see. Okay, that's kind of what I expected. Ted McMillan going there. Okay, and that would be shocking, like just seeing if the board fell like this would be crazy. But let's go ahead and let's get to round 2. Let's see what's going on here. So let's see who wants to trade first before we think about.
I'm not me personally, I wouldn't trade out of this.
I wouldn't either. I was just curious to see who was there.
There's too many good players on the board for me to trade out of this. I mean, just looking, Jihad Campbell, Xavier Watts, Landon Jackson, Jack Sawyer, JT, Tuamau, and Tyler Booker.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just too many good players on this board. If I could have went back to like 48, cool, because then even if Watts, Campbell, and Booker are off the board or some combination, you still have a player that you like. But me personally, I mean, it really depends on what they do in free agency, right? Because if they go out there and sign Will Hernandez or, because that's the name that's
I
going to
think they're going to. I think they will. So what I'm thinking we do is I'm thinking we take Campbell here, get another linebacker, put in the room, and we kind of just go from there.
Yeah, I feel good about that as well.
All right, let's see. Holy crap! All right, let's see who we got.
Josiah Stewart, Travion Henderson, Jalen Royals, Jonah from Zona, Gunnar Helm. Out of these guys, well, let's see if we can trade back.
Yeah, I want to trade back. Let's see.
6 spots. I'm definitely willing to do that. Step back 6 spots, and 136 would be a 4th round pick, right?
Let me look. I'm pretty sure it is. What is it? Seattle?
Seattle, yeah.
1 second. I'm pretty sure it is. I just don't want to be wrong and be like, oh no. 136 is a 4th round comp pick.
Cool. So I'm going to offer that trade.
Awesome.
So we step back in the draft, and Jalen Royals is there, wide receiver from Utah State.
I think I saw Tez on the board. I would probably look to go for it with him.
Tez is on the board, correct?
Yeah,
but I mean, I would look to trade back again, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, I mean, we don't have a problem with that. I don't particularly care, but I'm just kind of like, Who would want? Well, who wants to come up the board though? That's the question. Aside from Jacksonville, I think. Or click on the. Let's see who else wants to come up.
New Orleans at 93.
Okay.
Could you drop back 6 spots? I still think you can get a receiver here because I'd be looking at a receiver.
Yeah, I think
there's Tej Johnson.
But you got to remember, look, with the teams that are, because that's the thing too, is I know that with how this receiver class is going to look, by the time if you trade back again, you're probably not going to have another receiver on the board until late. That's why I'm cool with taking Tez Johnson, because you need a dude I personally think you need a dude like that on your team. I'm not sure, where would you think the Cowboys should go in this direction, if you don't mind me asking?
I mean, me personally, I want a little bit of a bigger receiver because I mean, like Tej Johnson, I like him a lot, but I mean,
let's put the Cowboy hat on. Yeah, let's put
smaller, speedier receiver. I kind of already have that with Turpin. Depending on what they think of Turpin, and I mean, I like Tej Johnson, but.
You think they would go with Royals in this situation? Because
I think they'd go
because I think they would see. Here's the thing: is my heart would tell me take Tez Johnson here, but I know how the Cowboys are with their measurables with receivers. They like dudes that are over 6 foot and are built a certain way, and I think he fits the mold of that.
So
let's just take Royals and kind of go from there. Just kind of thinking what the Cowboys would do. And I know Trey Harris was on the board too, but again, I do that would be interesting.
Jackson Dart, Quinn. Me personally, I'm not as big of a Jackson Dart fan.
I have him as a 4th round grade, so this would be perfect. But again, I don't. Honestly, you know what? Let's have some fun with it. Let's take Jackson Dart in round 4. Cowboys want to, we just talked about how the Cowboys want a quarterback,
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
Here we could look this direction with Luke.
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit on the
or Quincy Riley, even though those numbers don't look very good. CJ West is a guy I mean, me personally, I just here and draft CJ West.
Let's do it, man. Hey, he's been, again, just being members of Big Ten football, we know how he is, so.
And then I would look to even go with another linebacker. I like these 3 guys: Cody Simon, especially Stutzman.
Lindenberg's a guy that I like out of Minnesota. Again, I'm a bit more skewed towards the Big Ten, mainly because, again, we watch a lot of Big Ten football with me being Penn State guy, you're an Ohio State guy. Yeah, I think that you got to get bodies in that room, dude.
So where are we thinking here?
What do you think? Would you prefer Simon or would you? Because I know you're an Ohio State guy. What do you think about?
I like Cody Simon a lot. If I'm just going off because I haven't really done a deep dive into these guys just yet. It looks like Cody Simon they ranked the highest with their PFF score.
I mean, yeah. Okay. I mean, hey, I took the last pick. We're more than happy to go with Cody Simon here for this pick, and then again we're on the board again not too long after that.
There's two people that you could potentially look at. You could potentially look at Caden Priskin. I don't even know how to say his last name, but when you look at his measurables, 6'6", 255 pounds, maybe that's what is it? Ball of clay type of guy that you can look to develop. Already took the quarterback. Maybe you look at Jonah here, the center, or Emory Jones as depth, or maybe you add Tim Smith, add to that defensive line room, or you could go cornerback here.
Yeah. So like typically when you get into the 5th round, you're kind of just starting to take flyers on guys and stuff like that. So to me, I would say that another name to keep an eye out on in this process is going to be Jake Majors, the center out of Texas, just as a heads up. But I would say, honestly, I'm just thinking where I would go in this instance. I think that I'm just thinking how this draft might pan out. So
I know where I would go here.
Yeah.
I'd go Braden Swinson.
Okay. That's fine.
That's who me personally. I think
I'm just thinking like I'm like, where else are you gonna go? And then I would say that maybe for this pick, I would say you would take a flyer on because like with you bringing Dart in, you bring in his tight end as a familiarity piece with Caden. Yeah, so let's go with that. Let's see who else is on the board. Like I said, I'm thinking take Jake Majors here. Let's just do that. The center.
We can roll with that.
Again, we're kind of getting into the weeds, so it's like it doesn't matter.
Tyler Sko. I mean, a lot of people are very high on him, but he's not going to be around here. They're going to draft him a little higher. I'd go with Elijah Clark.
Let's go for it. Know my Syracuse people just because got people that went to Syracuse, so good stuff there. Like I said, we're in the
Nazir Stackhouse, maybe. I don't know. I think I know where they'd go here. I think
yeah, like that's been our thing is like they're gonna take Shiloh in the 7th round. Let's
draft him.
Yeah, let's just do it. Let's have some fun with it.
Let's see.
Like I said, I don't care about a 7th round. Yeah, we got an award. How did we do? What was A minus? That's probably I think that's the highest grade we've got. You know why? It's because we took Gaddison and they keep having him as an F, so it's weighing down the whole draft class. I'd honestly, I think if this was the draft, I'd give it like maybe a B plus. I would say. I mean, I'm pretty hard on myself when it comes to grading draft classes and stuff like that. But no, I think that was a pretty good draft. I would say. I mean, I think that's the first time I've seen Jackson Dart available on day 3.
Yeah,
and that's probably going to be the only time you're going to see him available on day 3. So, yeah, man. I mean, it's pretty much exactly what we thought it was going to be, which is again. It's probably going to be the last mock draft we do where you're going to see some of those dudes in the same spots, So I just think it's funny. I mean, what do you think? How would you grade that draft, Chris?
I'd go with B plus.
Sounds good. Yeah, kind of on the same wavelength there, mainly because
you address a lot of needs. Yeah, you address a lot of needs. Get a backup quarterback. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we're not going to hold y'all for too long. It's just that the fact of the matter is, again, it's a quiet part of the offseason. There wasn't a whole lot like when we started the show because there's a lot of moving parts. You get a new coach and stuff like that. But the coaching staff's been finalized. Now it's on the front office to do their job, and that's where we're going to be talking about moving forward. But man, I'm excited. Combine's here, dude. Dude, we're almost in March. This is crazy. It's getting warmer. Like, thank God. But
thank God. Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, but now, Chris, did you have any other thoughts before we head on out?
No, I'm all good.
Sounds good. Well, guys, thank you guys so much for tuning into the Cowboys Roundup once again. If you haven't done so, please hit the like button. Subscribe if you're new to all the channels that you're watching this on, whether it's on Twitter /X, Chris's channel, my channel, wherever you're seeing it. Like it, comment, do all that stuff. And we'll catch you guys next week for the next iteration of the Cowboys Roundup. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
See ya. And